Percent conversions. Here are the basic rules of percent conversions. Decimals to percents. Move the decimal point 2 places to the right. Percents to decimals. Move the decimal point 2 places to the left. We will use this a lot throughout the course, moving the decimal places. So you will have to make sure you understand what this means and how to do it. Let's take a look at a decimal 0.45. Remember from our fractions chapter, we talked about what type of fraction this would be. Now we're going to take a look at how this converts into a percentage. When you're changing a decimal to a percent, you just go to wherever the decimal point is, move that decimal place 2 places, and you get 45%. If you have a percentage like 45%, you want to move the decimal point 2 places to the left, and that will get you 0.45 as a decimal. If you have a larger decimal like 1.2, as a percentage, this decimal point would move over twice. Now notice there's nothing here, so we just add a 0, and we get 120%. Changing 120% back into a decimal, all you're doing is moving this decimal point 2 places to the left, and that will give you 1.20 or 1.2. Remember that when you are changing decimals to percentages, all you're really doing is multiplying by 100. This is because all percentages are based on 100% being the whole. Remember how we talked about percentages and fractions are parts of a whole. 100% is the same as 1, you can see here, if we move the decimal, 1.00 or 1, which is the same as 1 whole. So whenever we want to get a percentage, all we're actually doing is multiplying by 100. The same thing goes in reverse. Whenever we want to get a decimal out of a percent, all we're doing is dividing by 100, which is the opposite of multiplying. Now, fractional percents to decimals are another way of converting. We can convert 2.5%. Also, fractions to percents, we simply divide to get a decimal, then move the decimal point. And percent to fractions, we're only multiplying by 1 over 100. Another way to say that is to divide by 100. Let's take a look. So 2.5%. Don't be afraid of this 1/2. All it's talking about is 0.5 in decimal form. You simply tack that on here. So the decimal is still here. You're still moving it 1 time past the fraction and the 2nd time past the 2. To get a decimal, you have 0.25. That's because 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. But because of the place value that it's placed in, it becomes 100th, so 5/100ths. Let's take a look at another one, 2.1/4%. Remember, 1/4% is 0.25. Removing the decimal over and tacking that 0.25 on. So we have 2.25 is the decimal value of 2.25%. Now fractions to percents. Let's take a look at 4/5. If you divide 5 into 4, it's much easier to do this on your calculator, and that's what I would recommend. You simply input 4, the dividing sign, and then you input the 5. But this is another way to do it. 5 does not go into 4. Remember to bring up the decimal. 5 goes into 40 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. There's none left over. So you have 0.8 as the decimal for 4/5. Now that you have a 0.8, if you want to change that into a percentage, remember moving the decimal over twice, adding in that 0, and you get 80%. Let's look at a percent changing into a fraction. Let's try 25%. Now, most of you might be able to just see by looking that 25% is the same as a quarter of a dollar. So 25% is 1/4. A lot of us know that already. But how do we do the math to get to that point? Do you remember the decimal is here on a percentage? We move it 2 places to the left, and we get 0.25 as a decimal. Now, 0.25 is the same as 25/100ths. If we reduce this fraction, we would get 25 goes into 25 once, 25 goes into 100 4 times, and you would end up with 1/4.